If you own a home in Bellevue right now, there's a question that's probably been sitting in the back of your mind, maybe quietly, maybe constantly. Should I sell now or should I wait? And the reason this question is so difficult is because the stakes are real. This isn't like deciding when to sell a stock or when to trade out of a small investment. For most homeowners, this is one of the largest financial decisions they will ever make. And in a market like Bellevue, small differences in timing, strategy, and positioning can create very large differences in outcome. We're not talking about a few $1,000s. We're talking about the possibility of leaving tens of thousands, sometimes even hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table, just by being slightly early, slightly late, or slightly off in your approach. And that's where things get complicated, because Bellevue doesn't behave like a simple housing market. It's not just driven by local buyers. It's not just driven by interest rates. It's not just driven by supply and demand in a basic sense. It's influenced by multiple forces at the same time. Tech hiring cycles, stock market performance, relocation patterns, interest rate changes, and even broader economic confidence. All of these factors interact together, and when they shift, even slightly, they can create noticeable changes in how the market behaves. Sometimes quickly, sometimes in ways that don't seem obvious at first. And that's why so many homeowners feel stuck. Because you're not just trying to answer a simple yes or no question, you're trying to read a moving target. You're trying to figure out what the market is doing now and what it might do next. And more importantly, how to position yourself so you're not reacting late. So instead of guessing, let's slow this down and walk through it clearly. Let's start with what's actually happening in Bellevue right now. Because if you don't understand the current market, everything else becomes speculation. Bellevue has always been what we call a supply-constrained market. There's limited land available. There are desirable neighborhoods that don't expand. And there's a steady stream of buyers coming in, many of whom have strong financial positions. That combination, limited supply and strong demand, has historically supported home values. And that hasn't disappeared. But what has changed is the behavior of buyers inside that system. A few years ago, buyers were moving quickly. They were making decisions fast. They were competing aggressively. And in many cases, they were willing to stretch beyond what might have felt comfortable just to secure a home. That created a very forgiving environment for sellers. If a home was slightly overpriced, it might still sell. If it wasn't perfectly prepared, it might still attract offers. If the marketing wasn't exceptional, it might not matter as much. But today, that's no longer the case. Buyers today are more aware, more analytical, more patient. They are taking the time to compare options. They are paying attention to pricing relative to other listings. They are evaluating condition more closely, and they are much more willing to walk away if something doesn't feel right. And that shift, more than anything else, is what defines the current market, because it changes the margin for error. In the past, the market could absorb mistakes. Today, it doesn't. If a home is priced even slightly above where buyers perceive value, it can lose attention quickly. If it doesn't show well compared to other options, it can be overlooked. If it doesn't stand out, it can blend in. And blending in is one of the worst things that can happen when you're trying to sell. And here's something that's important to understand. When a home loses early momentum, it becomes harder to recover, because buyers notice. They see how long a home has been on the market. They wonder why it hasn't sold. They assume there's something wrong, even if there isn't. And that perception changes how they approach the home. They negotiate more. They hesitate more. They wait longer. So the first impression in this market matters more than ever. But here's the opportunity in all of this. Demand is still there. It hasn't disappeared. It's just more selective. And that means that homes that are positioned correctly are still performing well. They're still attracting attention. They're still generating interest. And in some cases, they're still moving quickly. So this is not a weak market. It's a more disciplined market. Now let's build on that, because this leads directly into one of the most important concepts you need to understand right now, the idea of a split market. And this is where a lot of confusion comes from, because you might hear that homes are selling quickly, and at the same time, you might see homes sitting for weeks. And it feels contradictory, but it's not. Both are happening at the same time, because different segments of the market are behaving differently. Homes that are priced in a range that attracts a larger pool of buyers tend to have more activity. There are simply more people who can afford them, more people looking, more competition. But as you move into higher price points, something changes. The buyer pool becomes smaller, and those buyers tend to be more selective. They have more options, they have more leverage, and they don't feel the same urgency. So instead of one consistent market, you have multiple micro markets operating at the same time. And where your home sits within those markets matters a lot. Two homes can come on the market at the same time, in the same general area, with similar features, and still have completely different experiences. One gets strong activity immediately, the other sits. And that difference often comes down to positioning. Not luck, not timing alone, but how well the home aligns with what buyers are looking for right now. Now let's shift into something that feels safe, but often isn't. Waiting. Because waiting sounds logical, it sounds cautious, it sounds like you're avoiding risk. But in reality, waiting is not neutral. It's a decision, and it carries its own set of risks. Let's break that down. First, interest rates. Interest rates directly affect affordability. When rates go up, monthly payments go up. And when payments go up, some buyers are no longer able or willing to purchase at the same price point. That reduces demand, even if only slightly. And when demand softens, pricing pressure can follow. Second, inventory. If more homeowners decide to sell at the same time, inventory increases. And when inventory increases, buyers have more choices. And when buyers have more choices, they become more selective, they negotiate more, they compare more, they wait more. And that creates more competition for your home. Third, momentum. Markets are not just driven by numbers, they're driven by perception. When homes are selling quickly, buyers feel urgency. They feel like they need to act. They feel like they might miss out. But when homes are sitting, that urgency disappears. Buyers feel like they have time. They feel like they have control. And that changes everything about how they behave. So waiting is not just about hoping the market improves. It's about understanding what could change while you wait, and whether those changes help you or hurt you. Now let's flip the perspective, because this isn't about creating fear. It's about understanding opportunity. So when does selling now actually make sense? It makes sense when you can create an advantage. An advantage in this market comes from three things: preparation, pricing, and exposure. Preparation means your home shows better than others. It means it creates a strong first impression. It means it stands out. Pricing means you position your home where buyers see value. Not where you hope it lands, but where it actually attracts attention. And exposure means your home reaches the right audience. Because even a great home can struggle if the right buyers never see it. When these three elements come together, something important happens. You create momentum, and momentum creates leverage. And leverage is what allows you to control the outcome. Not the market itself, but your position within it. And here's something that's important for many Bellevue homeowners. A lot of sellers today have built significant equity over the past several years, which means even if the market isn't at its peak, they are still in a strong financial position. So the goal isn't to wait for perfection, because perfection rarely shows up clearly. The goal is to recognize when you are in a position to succeed. Now let's bring this back to you, because at the end of the day, the right decision isn't about the market alone. It's about your situation, your timing, your goals, your flexibility. Ask yourself a few key questions. Are you planning to move in the next 1 to 2 years anyway? Has your home already appreciated enough that you feel comfortable with the outcome? Would selling now make your next step easier? Would it give you more flexibility? If the answer to those questions is yes, then selling now may be worth serious consideration. But if you recently purchased, if you have a very low interest rate that would be difficult to replace, or if you don't have a clear plan for what comes next, then waiting may be the better move. There is no one-size-fits-all answer here, and that's important to understand, because the biggest mistake isn't selling too early, and it's not waiting too long. The biggest mistake is making a decision without clarity, without understanding your position, without understanding how your home fits into the current market, and without understanding what factors could influence your outcome. And before making any decision, it's also important to recognize that real estate decisions can involve financial, legal, and tax considerations. This video is for general informational purposes only, and it's always a good idea to consult with qualified professionals before taking action. So let's come back to the original question. Is now a good time to sell a home in Bellevue? For some homeowners, yes. For others, not yet. But the real answer is this. It's a good time to sell when you understand your position and you act with strategy. Because in a market like this, strategy beats timing every time.